He never rushed her goodbye. Every evening, like clockwork, he'd be there, leaning against the old lamppost across from her small bookstore, just as she was flipping the open sign to closed. His name was Leo, and the woman inside was Clara. They weren't a couple, not in the traditional sense anyway. They were just two people whose lives intersected for a few precious minutes at the end of each day. It started subtly. Clara first noticed him a few months back. A tall man with kind eyes and a patient smile, always with a book in his hand, though never the same one. At first, she thought it was a coincidence. The city was busy, and her little shop, the page-turner, was on a well-trodden street. But after a week of seeing him in the same spot at the same time, her curiosity was piqued. He never tried to come in, never waved, just stood there, watching her lock up. One rainy Tuesday, as she struggled with her umbrella and a heavy box of new arrivals, he finally crossed the street. "Need a hand with that?" he asked, his voice calm and steady, a comforting sound against the patter of the rain. Clara, flustered but grateful, accepted. He took the box with ease and held his own umbrella over her as she fumbled with her keys. He walked with her to her car, parked just around the corner. "Thank you," she'd said, her cheeks flushed. "It's no trouble," he replied with that same gentle smile. "Drive safe." And just like that, he was gone, melting back into the rainy evening. After that night, their quiet ritual changed. He would still wait, but now he'd cross the street as she locked the door. Their conversations were brief, simple. "How was your day?" he'd ask. "Busy," she might say. "We got a first edition of a classic in." He'd nod, his eyes lighting up with genuine interest. "That's wonderful. You must have been thrilled." He seemed to understand the small joys of her world. He spoke of his own day in simple terms. A challenging project at his architecture firm. A funny thing he saw in his lunch break. They never exchanged numbers. They never made plans to meet for coffee. Their entire relationship existed in that 10-minute window between her locking the shop and her getting into her car. To an outsider, it might seem strange, almost incomplete. But to Clara, it was perfect. It was a moment of peace, a predictable anchor in the often chaotic sea of her life. Leo's presence was a quiet promise that no matter how stressful the day had been, he would end with a kind word and a warm smile. One evening, Clara was feeling particularly drained. A difficult customer had left her feeling small and incompetent. As she turned the key in the lock, the weariness was written all over her face. Leo was there, as always. He took one look at her and said, "Tough one, huh?" She just nodded, her throat tight. He didn't press for details. Instead, he just stood with her in silence for a moment. "Your grandfather sounds like a wise man." "He was," Leo said softly. "He would have loved your shop." That simple validation, that understanding, was more comforting than any grand gesture could ever be. He didn't try to fix her problem. He simply shared a piece of himself, a piece of his story, and in doing so, made her feel seen. As weeks turned into months, Clara started looking forward to 9 p.m. more than any other time of day. She found herself dressing a little nicer, making sure her hair was just right before she went to lock up. She learned that Leo loved old jazz music, that he had a golden retriever named Gus, and that his dream was to design a public library. She shared stories of her own, of growing up surrounded by books, of the dream she'd poured her life savings into. They were building a world together, piece by piece, in the twilight. One crisp autumn evening, Leo wasn't there. Clara locked up, her eyes scanning the familiar spot by the lamppost. It was empty. A strange pang of disappointment, almost like panic, hit her. She waited for 10 minutes, then 15. The street felt colder, emptier without him. She told herself it was silly. He had his own life. Something must have come up, but the drive home was unnervingly quiet. He wasn't there the next night, or the night after that. A week went by. The silence at the end of her day was deafening. Clara realized with a startling clarity how much those 10 minutes had come to mean to her. Leo wasn't just a man who waited at closing time. He had become her friend, her confidant, her quiet harbor. The space he occupied by the lamppost was now a void. She even found herself looking up architecture firms online, wondering if she could find him, but it felt like crossing a boundary they had so carefully built. On the 8th day, as she was about to give up hope and get in her car, she saw a figure hurrying down the street. It was Leo. He looked tired, his face etched with worry, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. "Clara," he said, slightly out of breath. "I'm so sorry." Before she could respond, he continued, "My dad. I had a fall. I had to go out of town. He's okay now, recovering, but I couldn't call. We never." He trailed off, looking at the ground. Clara's heart ached, not with annoyance, but with relief and a deep wave of empathy. "Leo, I'm so sorry to hear that. Is he really okay?" "He will be," Leo said, looking back up at her. "But the whole time, I just kept thinking, what if you thought I'd just disappeared? What if you thought I didn't care?" He took a hesitant step closer. "These few minutes at the end of your day, they've become the best part of mine in that moment under the warm glow of the street lamp." The unspoken truth hung between them. This wasn't just about a routine anymore. It was about connection. It was about two people finding solace in each other's presence. "I missed you," Clara admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I missed this." Leo reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, wrapped package. "I know this is breaking our rules," he said with a half-smile, "but I saw this in a little shop near the hospital, and I thought of you." Clara carefully unwrapped it. It was a beautiful, vintage bookmark, made of silver, with a tiny, intricate carving of a lamppost on it. Tears welled in her eyes. It was such a small thing, yet it held the entire universe of their shared moments. It was a symbol of his patience, his quiet vigil. "Leo," she began, not knowing what to say. He finally closed the small distance between them. "Clara," he said, his voice earnest, "I don't want to just be the man who waits at closing time anymore. I was wondering if, maybe tomorrow, you'd let me take you to get some coffee before you open the store." A slow, brilliant smile spread across Clara's face. All this time, he had never rushed her goodbye, but now he was asking for a hello. A real beginning. "I would love that," she said, her voice full of a hope she hadn't realized she'd been holding on to. The next morning, the closed sign stayed on the door a little longer than usual. Across the street, the lamppost stood empty, because for the first time, Leo wasn't waiting outside. It was inside, sitting across from Clara at a small table near the window, 2 cups of coffee between them, with a whole day of conversation ahead. He never rushed her goodbye, because he had been patiently waiting for the right time to say hello. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more stories like this. We love sharing these moments with you. See you in the next one.